Oh, hi there. Didn't hear you come in. So in 2021, I decided I wanted to do more reading for a couple of reasons. One, I'm not allowed to go outside and I'm very bored. Two, reading is good for you and everyone should read, blah, blah, blah. And three, because I write both professionally and for fun, and the number one piece of advice I always hear from authors and good writers is that if you want to improve your writing, you need to do more reading. So I got on Goodreads and I made myself a little list of books I wanted to read. Here's a really unfun fact for you. Men generally don't read very much fiction at all. It's a really weird trend. I'm a man and I read fiction. Yeah, I'm not talking about you, all right? I'm talking about generally, okay? Listen when I speak to you. And that was something I realized was kind of true of me. I would mostly read non-fiction if I read at all. So I tried to read more fiction. I also tried to read some more things that were out of my comfort zone. I basically tried not to have a comfort zone. You know, I just tried to say, okay, if it's a book, I will read it. Hopefully it'll be good. And so recently I've read 5 books, all quite different books actually, I'm happy to say. I enjoyed all of them in very different ways. Hannah also read 2 of these books, so she's gonna hop into the video and have a chat about them as well. But I thought I would just kind of run you through them, give you my thoughts, not necessarily reviews, but just kind of an overview of my experience with them. And I guess whether I would recommend them. I also realized when I was preparing for this that 4 of these books, all the fiction books here, are all told from the perspective of a woman. So, you know, if you want to give me a medal for being the wokest man alive, I won't decline it. So let's just go through them in the order that I read them. I'll do little timestamps if you want to jump around. This is going to be spoiler free. I'm not going to ruin these books because I'd like you to read them maybe. But I'll just give you my thoughts and feelings. Let's start with the first book I finished this year, and that was Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. I spilled some coffee on this so you can't see it, but it's Anna Karenina. This is a book that frequently appears on lists of books you should read before you die. That's why I decided to read it. I just went on one of those lists. It has also been widely called the greatest novel ever written by tons of people far more intelligent than I. It's kind of interesting when a book is so widely held as the greatest novel ever written. Not the greatest story ever told, because that is of course the Bible. But when so many people consider a book to be the greatest novel ever written, you kind of think like, well, what does my opinion matter? Do you know what I mean? It's already been decided that this book is good. Who cares what Ben thinks about this? So I guess I'll just kind of give you my thoughts on the experience of reading it. I think the things that turn people off from reading this book are firstly that it's originally a Russian book and they're worried that they won't understand it. Obviously it's in English, but maybe because the translation isn't very good, maybe because it makes cultural references that they won't understand. Related to that, I think the second reason that people are scared of this book is because of the Russian names. You know, there's a lot of people in this with very long, complicated Russian names. And then the third reason, probably the main reason, is that it is just exceptionally long, this book. It is such a long book. It is, let's have a look. The novel itself is 817 pages, and then it's also got like 20 pages of index in this edition to sort of explain to you what he's talking about some of the time. I would say in my experience, I found the book incredibly easy to understand. This is a fantastic translation. I don't have to hand who did the translation, but this is the Penguin cloth-bound classics, and the translation is fantastic. It's a beautifully written book. I know I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, but I loved reading it. The language is beautiful. Had no problem with reading it on a moment-to-moment level. In terms of the Russian names, maybe a little bit confusing at first, not because they're long or sort of foreign to me, but more just in the fact that most characters have multiple names. So a character will have their first name, their full name, they'll usually also have a nickname, and then a lot of them also have a title. So, you know, a character might be referred to as Katerina, or Kitty, which is her nickname, or, you know, some of them are princes and princesses, so someone will just call them Princess. Sometimes they'll just call them by an entirely different surname. So a lot of the time you're like, who is talking here? But the thing is, there's not that many main characters, so very quickly you can work out who's talking to who just from context. Also, a little thing that I looked up, which I actually think really helps, is I looked up what a prince and princess meant at the time this was written. This was written in 1878 when Russia still had an empire, still had an emperor, and there's a lot of characters who are princes and princesses, and I was like, wow, this emperor's got a lot of kids, like how is this possible? But then I looked it up, and actually at that time, when they say prince or princess, that's just the way it's been translated to English. What it really means is like duke or like nobleman. And that actually made the book so much clearer for me, because I was like, God, so many people are related to the emperor in this book, like what are the chances? In terms of the length, right? That really honestly affected my experience with this book so much. And that might make me sound like a bit of a cretin, but you know, time is a finite resource, and whether you love this book or hate it, it's going to take up a lot of time just getting through it. It doesn't matter how fast a reader you are, there's a lot of words on these pages, the text is very small, there's very few pictures, and no crosswords in this book. So what is it about? It's set, as I said, in the 1870s in Russia. It's about Russian nobles. It's partly about Anna Karenina, who is a noble woman who, I don't know how much to spoil, I don't even know what is a spoiler with this book. She's sort of tempted away from her marriage by a new man, which at the time was quite groundbreaking and quite scandalous to write a book about adultery or potential adultery. I think actually, I'm no expert on the subject, but it's sort of a feminist book as well, because it's obviously, there's large parts of it that are written from a female perspective, and you know, there's a lot of discussion of like female independence and what is a woman's role in the world, obviously told very much through the lens of, you know, several hundred years ago. And then you also have the concurrent stories of other people sort of in Anna's orbit or who are related to Anna, including this guy Levin, who is basically a stand-in for Tolstoy, and he's kind of trying to work out like, what is the point of life? How is a person happy? Like what truly makes you happy in life? All the characters are kind of trying to do that, as everyone is all the time. And you know, the arc is sort of what happens with Anna, and the arc is kind of like Levin's life developing. It's just kind of really about their lives and how they develop. But I'm not 100% sure why it's named after Anna. I guess she's always kind of, if it's not expressly about her, she's always kind of in the background of this book. But she does disappear for long periods of time. It should be called Levin, but next time I see Tolstoy, I'll tell him that. I think the experience of this was kind of like a bit of a battle between my head and my heart, because my head, you know, like the like pretentious intellectual side of me was like, this is so beautifully written, this is so important, you know, so much of this is fantastically beautiful and poetic, and like, you know, you come away from reading this feeling improved as a reader. And you know, my head was saying all this stuff like, wow, this is such a great book. But my heart, my like basic human heart, was saying, oh my God, this book is so long. Why will this book not end? Why is nothing really happening in this book? Because it has a plot, it has a beginning, and it has an end, which, to be fair, the end kind of gives everything that preceded it more context. You know, by the time you've finished, you do feel like there's been a full arc. But there's no getting away from the fact that the middle of this book is just you kind of hanging out with some people for a long time. And it's very much like, and then they went over there, and then this happened, and then he said this, and he thought that was strange that they said this. Like, a lot of it is just people sort of contemplating things for hundreds of pages. There's a character called Levin, and he loves farming, and there are long passages of this book where he just talks about farming and his theories about farming. And I did find it hard to read because, first of all, I'm not interested in farming. Apology to farmers. Second of all, he's talking about farming in the 1800s, so it's not like it's even relevant to now. This is like out-of-date farming he's talking about. And I looked online at other people who'd read this book, and they said, you know, just skip the farming bits. But I don't really like to skip parts of books. And also, to be fair, sometimes within all the mess of the farming, there is some sort of deeper existential lesson he's trying to give you, but a lot of the time he's just talking about fields and farming. And because there is kind of a lack of propulsion or plot a lot of the time, I found myself enjoying it in the moment while I was reading it, but then when I would put it down, I didn't really have a big drive to go back to it, because I wasn't like, I have to find out what happens, because nothing's really happening. It's like, you know, oh my God, I have to get back and find out more things he thinks about farming, you know? So it's tricky, because on the one hand, I have to recommend it. It's a fantastic book. It's the greatest novel ever written in so many people's eyes. But also, you know, a lot of it does feel like eating your greens. You know, by the time the end comes, you feel like you kind of get your dessert as well. But, God, it's such a long book. All right, then after that, I jumped to just the total opposite kind of book. I read Generation Friends, an inside look at the show that defined a television era. It's a book about the show Friends. This guy interviewed loads of people who worked on Friends, got the kind of behind the scenes of the production of the show, kind of traced the show from beginning to end. I really liked it. I really like Friends. If you're not interested in Friends, then you're not going to care about this book. But I think as behind the scenes books go, very good. I think as a super fan or as an avid fan, you can almost read as much into what is not in this book as to what is. Because a lot of the like guest stars will get a whole mention in this, you know, like Rachel's boyfriend Joshua gets like a whole section where it's like, and then this actor came and he joined the show and he did this and whatever. But there's some actors and some characters who just get completely glossed over. Like Emily, Ross's English wife, just never gets mentioned in this, which to me implies that maybe she didn't get along with the cast or the crew. This is just me speculating, but it's weird the way no one wanted to say anything about her. And she was like a main character in the show for like more than a season, and she's just like not in this, which I think is interesting. There's also just one chapter that's about like a lawsuit that was brought against the show, which doesn't really fit with the rest of the book. I'm not really sure why it was included. There's not enough information about the lawsuit for it really to be interesting. It doesn't really relate to the show. Felt a bit like padding, to be honest with you. But apart from that, good book, would recommend if you like Friends. All right, from there I went on and read Carrie by Stephen King. It's his first published novel. It's quite a well-known story, you might know it. It's about a young girl called Carrie who's in high school and discovers she has telekinetic powers. It's very Stephen King in its premise. It's an interesting book because it's told in such a way where it basically tells you the ending quite early on. It tells you the ending as it's telling you the beginning. Makes more sense when you're reading it, but it means that the end and the beginning sort of meet in the middle, and the book kind of climaxes in the middle in a really clever way. Very readable, a real page turner, you know, full of plot, full of action. I think quite a good distillation of like high school, particularly in the 70s or wherever this was set. You know, I'm not that old, but I imagine that's probably a pretty accurate recreation of high school in the 70s in America. There's kind of some scary stuff in it, but it's more of a thriller. Yeah, very simple one to recommend, would recommend it. Also short, easy to read. Then we come on to this book, Black Water Lilies by Michel Bussi, who is French. I really loved this book. Hannah also read this book and had some differing opinions. I'll bring her in a second. So my dad recommended this book to me and he said, this is a really good murder mystery that has a really good twist. And you'd think, oh, that's a spoiler, but it literally, on the cover of the book, the top review here says, the novel ends with one of the most reverberating shocks in modern crime fiction. So the book is openly telling you, on the front cover, this book has a good twist. Which is, you know, quite a ballsy move. That's BDE, that's big drama energy, when you're just saying, look, this book's got a twist, and we are so confident in it that we're going to tell you it's there. And I have to say, I loved it. I completely fell for the twist. I did not see it coming at all. I think I didn't have enough faith in the author that he would go quite as big with the twist as he did. I've been watching a lot of, over the past year, as you can imagine, I've been watching a lot of television, and I've been watching a lot of ITV TV murder mystery shows, and have just been consistently disappointed by how weak all of them are. Like The Undoing. Did you watch The Undoing? The Undoing was so boring. Because all these murder mysteries have no mystery. It's like, this person got murdered, probably by this guy, and then there'll be like 10 episodes. Each of those episodes an hour long, and then right at the end they'll be like, what do you know, it was that guy after all. And you're like, why did you waste my time? You know, when I read a murder mystery or watch a murder mystery, I want like Agatha Christie style twists and turns. And this one really goes for it, and I really liked it. And you know, it's a book by Michel Bussi, and there's a body that's found in a stream, so I can confirm that this book does have, you know, wet-ass Bussi. So plot-wise, real quick, it's a murder mystery. It starts immediately with, there's been a murder, an horrible grisly murder, and you have a flash new detective who's come up from the south of France, and he's joined the sort of little local police station, and he's going to try and solve the murder. And, you know, and maybe before things get worse. And it's told from the perspective of the detective. It's also told from the perspective of one of the locals. Sometimes you dip into other perspectives. And at times you're not sure why you're hearing from a particular person. You know, you hear from characters who seem completely unrelated to the murder, characters who don't know anything about the murder, and you're like, what have they got to do with all this? But of course, they're all pieces of yarn on the great cork board of the plot. I really liked it. I think it would be a good book to reread and sort of analyse whether you could see the twist coming. But Hannah, why don't you come join me, because you read this too. Round of applause for Hannah, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. having me. What did I think? I enjoyed the writing styles of each of the characters. I thought the second you started reading a chapter, you knew exactly who it was. I think to get into it, there's a lot of jumping around at the beginning, so I think probably quite a few people would jump off and not take the time to get into it. Like, it requires a level of concentration at the beginning.
But I do think once you get sucked in, you get sucked in.
Yeah.
But I agree that you have to like stick with it for a little bit.
I liked the tying in with like Monet.
Oh my god, the amount of Monet in this book, because it's about the little village where he lived.
Yeah, and it's beautiful. Like, the descriptions are really pretty. Like, it made me want to visit there. I definitely felt like immersed, and yeah, and I could very like vividly picture the like small town.
I actually feel like I don't need to visit now because I've spent so much time in this place in this book. There's a fun drinking game you can play in this book. Every time Monet is mentioned, take a shot, and then you will die. And
I think there was actually probably quite a lot of facts in there that I didn't know about him as like an artist, and which I don't think in a normal murder mystery you'd have like a different level rather than just the plot. Like, there was definitely more having the whole art scene and really going for it in that way, which I personally enjoyed.
There's something very satisfying about like, this guy really knows his stuff. Like, he clearly knows a lot about Monet, a lot about Impressionism, a lot about this specific little town or village, like really intimate knowledge. And there's something satisfying when you're reading that and you're like, I feel like I'm in safe hands because this person really knows what they're talking about.
I didn't realise how many water lilies he painted.
Yeah, something we learned in the book.
Something I learned in the book. Like, he just whipped them out from like a time in his life. That was all he did.
That's all he did, yeah.
But I mean, if it ain't broke.
Exactly.
And he was making the dollars.
I guess I tell you who wasn't broke. Bloody Monet.
But there was also a lot of French.
There's a lot of French.
There's a lot of French in the book. Not my strong suit. So a lot of the names I would just kind of do my own interpretation of them. Let's
go spoiler free, but I was thinking that maybe you and I could do a separate spoiler video for this and the other book we read.
Maybe. Oh yeah, maybe. Okay, fine.
Let's keep it spoiler free.
We'll keep it spoiler free. I think the problem is your family said there's this amazing twist. Yeah. Everyone online, when I went on Goodreads and was like, I'm going to start reading this, it was like, the twist. Suki was like, just wait for the twist. Yeah. Like, everyone was like, the twist. And I think I've got quite like a vivid imagination. And I was like, the whole way through, I was like, just dreaming really big about what this twist would be. And so I was personally left slightly disappointed. I think I just conjured up in my head that it was gonna be, I think I dreamed too big.
So you had the opposite experience from me, because I felt so burned by murder mysteries that I thought the really good twist was just gonna be that like a not obvious person did a murder, as opposed to like, it's quite a thorough twist in this. But would you recommend it, is the question.
I would, but I'll never think about it really again. If someone said, name me a good book, I don't think I'd be like, Black Water Lilies. Maybe if someone said, name me a good murder mystery book, I'd be like, but I wouldn't feel super confident because I will never think about it again. I would not want to reread it.
That's so interesting, we had such a different experience with it.
I didn't mind it. Did I give it 3 on Goodreads?
You did. I think Did
you give it 5?
I give everything 5 on Goodreads. I think I just love twists so much, and I really, something I really rate in fiction or movies or anything, I love it when someone just goes for it. You know, just kind of goes out there. And this book is a book where he's just like, he's really trying something with this. Do you know what I mean? Like,
fine, I'll buy the book.
He's put himself out there. Yeah.
You would reread it, because it's easy to say, yeah. I
wouldn't, but I don't reread anything.
I heard you before I came on saying I would reread it.
No, I think if you're the kind of person who likes to reread books, this would be one worth doing.
If you're the kind of person who likes to reread books, you'd probably reread most of them.
Weirdly, the only book I think I've ever reread, apart from the Bond books, was I read Deathly Hallows a few times, because that is a really good book. Weirdly, no author. No one wrote it. It appeared out of nowhere, out of the dust. Let's jump from this to an entirely different book. One of the most unique books I've ever read.
Is that focus?
It doesn't want to focus. It's called the Pisces, the Pisces.
Very difficult to spell when we both struggled with spelling Pisces, didn't we?
Oh yes, neither of us could find it.
Neither of us could spell it.
By Melissa Broder.
Broder.
Or Broder.
I think it's her first novel. So The Pisces is about a character called Lucy, who is having she breaks up with her boyfriend and moves to
California.
Thank you.
She's 38.
She's 38.
Comes up a lot.
And yeah, she basically house sits for her sister in California, and she meets a merman. I think the New York Times described it as, I think it was the New York Times, which was like a romance novel for the intellectual or something insane. So yes, that is the plot. She falls in love with a merman, and it's about their relationship and her life, and I'd say it's about like obsession and love and what other key themes are there?
I think the review you mentioned before about like it's like a romance novel with an intellectual element. I think it's like that, where if you on paper, if you just said it's about a woman who falls in love with a merman, you'd be like, all right, this is like kind of a trashy book. But it's not. It's like, what if that story was told by someone who is fully aware how nuts that is as a plot?
Yeah.
Who's going to run with it in every direction and really, because it's not, that's not the full plot. It's not just like page one, I met a merman, what am I going to do? Like, it's more about this woman's development. And the merman is part of that. And the book is fully aware that the merman stuff is nuts and bizarre.
Yeah, but I actually
leans into it.
I agree with that. It definitely doesn't feel like, then she met a fish. It's very much.
Sorry if you can hear our upstairs neighbours. They love to run, they love to jump. So why don't we go through the things we liked and didn't like?
Okay.
Do you want to start?
Sure. I liked Lucy as a character. I saw a lot of reviews that were like, she's very unlikable. No person is like that. She's like a completely ridiculous character. I don't agree with that. I think she's a very selfish character. I think in books, people always like to have kind of some like big rise in a character, and they start off terrible and then they quickly develop into something else, which definitely doesn't happen in this. She is a bit of a dick.
That's one of my least favourite criticisms people make of works of fiction is, the lead character was unlikable, therefore it's bad. It's like, the lead character doesn't need to be likable. Okay, yes, in a traditional Hollywood sense, the character is likable and great all the way through, or starts off bad and gets likable. But that's just one way of doing it. The main character you don't need to like them, you don't need to relate to them, they're just the main character. And like, I think she feels real. I think she could be a real person, but I don't like her, and that's fine. Yeah,
there can still be a story there without there being some like big transformation.
And I don't hate her. She's not like evil, but she's just like a very particular kind of person, a bit like real people in the real world who are kind of shades, aren't they?
Shades, indeed.
Yeah, like none of us are perfect.
I loved the writing style. I liked it that it was like a stream of consciousness. I felt like it was so simple to read. Like my head was like, when you just like read it, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it flowed so brilliantly, and I think it was very like delicate in the words and the phrases that it chose. Like I actually think that it was very carefully written.
There's a lot of thoughts and pondering and all that, but it never felt indulgent or like fluff or wasting your time.
Definitely.
When she had a thought, it was an interesting thought or a relevant thought, and there's no like wasted words. Very occasionally there would be a little word or phrase that I didn't quite jive with me, that I thought was maybe a bit cheesy, particularly because the book tries so hard not to be cheesy. Whenever it is cheesy, it kind of stands out a bit more. But 99% of the time, I love the writing, so I could forgive that. Because, who the hell am I to criticise?
It was funny.
I feel genuinely funny. It's a very, very sexually explicit book, but it's not like erotic, really. A lot of the time, the sex stuff is very funny and very like realistic and like kind of gross sometimes.
But it's long slogs, isn't it?
It's almost like she's kind of trying to wind you up or punish you, where she's like, and then this happened, and then I did this, and sometimes it's like sweet and romantic, but a lot of the time it's like grisly details.
Definitely.
But again, that's real, and I like that. It's funny, and again, it doesn't feel like gratuitous or pointless. It serves the plot. It says a lot about the character.
Definitely.
There's something that happens, the character does, that I think is, not to spoil it, but I think would be divisive for readers. I think, you could end the book with some people disliking her more than others. I don't think the book tries to really necessarily excuse the character for the bad things she does.
But people like online reviews I've read are like, there needs to be a warning that comes with the book. And I'm a bit like, get a grip. Like,
no, yeah, because just because
it is a book. Like,
and also because a character does something bad in a book, again, that doesn't mean the book condones it or says like, you should do this too. Like, you know, be an adult and recognize like,
yeah.
I read Game of Thrones. I'm not going to go and kill someone with a sword. That's not, you know.
But yes, overall, I absolutely loved it. I can't stop thinking about it. Every time I'm reading a new book, I'm like, I felt like elated. Like, I just loved it. I cannot stop thinking about it. I have like gone through the internet, gone on like podcasts, like trying to find anyone else who's like spoken about it just to like hear someone else's thoughts. Because it just, yeah, it stuck with me.
A glowing review from Hannah.
Yeah, 5 out of 5.
I think the only thing stopping me from liking it, and this is not...
Is that I liked it.
Is that you liked it... No, but you liked it so much. You were like, Ben, this book has changed my life, that I went into it, I have to say, with impossibly high expectations.
What, like the biggest
Yeah,
twist
like
ever?
the biggest twist ever. And so I loved this book, but also I was like, the fact that I came out of it when my life wasn't changed, I was like, oh... But I'd still give it a high mark.
Well, what's your high mark?
I mean, I tend to be very generous with my high marks.
It's a 5.
I tend to give it 5 or nothing, you know? I'd give it 4.
Oh, okay. So out of your 5 books, what's your favourite?
Oh wow, what a question. I don't know which one. Maybe the one I enjoyed reading most was just Black Water Lilies, just because I got so surprised by it. Carrie was great, but it's a well-known story, so I kind of knew quite a lot of the pieces going in. I think if that was a total fresh experience, I would have been like, wow. But the Pisces was great. I'd recommend all these books. You should read all these books, and we will do, I'm promising now, Hannah and I will do a spoiler video for these two, Black Water Lilies and the Pisces, because they're fun to discuss. And also coming up on this channel, I've decided I'm going to shave my head. So we're going to do a video of me shaving my head. So that'll be fun. Hannah's on the fence about that. Hannah, thank you so much for joining me in this video. Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you for commuting from over there to here.
Thanks for having me.
To be part of this. I'd like to thank Reading. I'd like to thank the authors for all they do. Thank you for watching, especially if you watched all the way to the end. Subscribe for more great content, and we'll see you around.
They could be like, subscribe for more book reviews. I was like, it's the first one you've ever done.
Well, maybe when I read 5 more books, if I ever do that again, I'll do this again. And let me know if you've enjoyed this in the comments, and maybe we'll do more.